Hey, BSC. So today we're going to talk about a topic that it doesn't typically get people excited necessarily.
No.
It often causes us to cringe a little bit, and it's cold calling.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that's a necessary evil. And I think when we think of cold calling, we think of like the job I had in college, where a part-time job where I would call on behalf of the university to raise money from alumni, and you would just get yelled at about the reasons the school didn't deserve their money or whatever.
Right.
You know, you were just an annoyance to people, and
Right.
so that's what we think. So maybe let's define cold
Yeah.
calling, particularly in our industry. What is it that we're doing and trying to do?
Yeah. So I guess a definition of cold calling, I think a good definition is it's an unsolicited encounter with a prospective customer where the prospective customer hasn't asked about your company or hasn't asked about your services. And so that could be a cold call, could be in person, that would be walking into a facility, or probably what the most common methodology now is a cold call via the telephone. So but both are ways of encountering somebody that hasn't asked to be encountered with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and why, I mean, you sort of teed this up, but why does it have such a negative connotation to it?
I think probably part of it is I don't think any of us like to receive cold calls.
Uh-uh.
I mean, most of the time, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit, most of the time I just don't even answer my telephone. And I think part of it is, so for instance, in my case, most of the cold calls that I get are via telephone, and they're people selling software as a service. And so their primary goal, I have found this, they know very little about our company. And then secondly, they are trying to push to set up an appointment with their sales manager. And so it's all about a particular goal, which is not bad in and of itself, but it's just, you just feel like you're being sold the whole time. I think that's why it has a negative connotation.
Well, let's talk about, because I think you and I both agree that this is an important piece of the sales process in our industry. And part of that is because we have a minimal number of prospective customers to go after.
Right.
And there's one contact typically in those facilities. And there's not other good ways to reach them.
That's right.
And so it's sort of, if we want those opportunities, we have to go after them. So maybe, why do we think cold calling is important?
Yeah, and I would say I'll go as far as to say I think it's critically important. And I guess this seems obvious, but you have to, at a certain point, once you've identified a prospective customer, you have to make some kind of a connection with them. And whether that's walking into their business and introducing yourself and asking a couple of questions that we'll talk about in a minute, or that's calling on the telephone and asking a few questions. But ultimately, if you've identified that company as a prospective customer, you need to kind of find out what their situation is, where their purchase readiness. And you can do it with email, and sometimes we'll use email in combination with cold calls, and we'll get a response to the email instead of the call. But at a certain point, you have to have a conversation.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about some tips for doing this well.
Yeah.
How do we do this well?
Yeah. So the first thing is to do research before making a call. Whether that's walking into it. We're just going to talk about making telephone calls mostly here, but it's just doing the research before you make a call. And that research is looking at their website, find out what they do, where they're headquartered. If you're calling, you're probably in most cases calling a particular person. Look them up on LinkedIn. You can look them up on Facebook, but just a little bit about that customer and that contact before you make the call.
Yep.
Secondly, is what I would say is to develop a call framework. Now, a lot of people say, hey, we need call scripts. And I think framework is a better terminology and a better approach to this. And the reason I say that is a call script sounds just that. Scripted.
Yeah.
And so I have these questions, and you're going to answer in one of three ways, and I'm going to go this. And the challenge with that is if you have a call script and they answer a way that's not on your piece of paper, then things go right. I've had people answer. I've answered questions of salespeople, and they do that. And so a framework in our situation is this, and it's just simple. When we get on a call, we're trying to achieve three things. We're trying to find out, am I talking to the person who is a part of the decision to make janitorial, or of the janitorial decision? Do you outsource the work, or does your company outsource the work? And then would you just give me a little description of where you are with your current situation? That's the whole find out where they are in their purchase readiness state. And so that's the goal and that's the framework. And sometimes we say different things based on the way the customer responds in that first few seconds. Now, having said that, the ultimate goal for sales is to make sales. And so if during that telephone call, after we've gathered that information, they want to engage us by asking questions, we've got a list of questions, common questions, we know how to answer them, and we will make an appointment there as well.
But finding that initial information, those basic things, let you know that your list is good, that you're talking to the right person, that they are a viable prospect that you do outsource, and when would be a good time to connect with them where they're at in their buyer's journey.
That's right. And so I would call that a framework rather than having a script. But again, scripts are fine. Third thing is I would say plan to call. And so what I mean by plan to call is put it on your calendar. So the best times, you can Google search this, the best times it looks like to call is between 10 a.m. and noon, and then say from 4 to 5 or 5:30 in the afternoon. So that's people who they're busy in the mornings, come to their office, start doing work around up until lunch, and then person finishing their day. They're more likely to be at their desk versus being at 8 o'clock where they're out meeting folks. And so the reason I say put it on your calendar and mark it out as cold calling, if you will, is because that's what you need, and that's what you need to do during that time. It's not, I'm going to do some prospect research and make calls. It's you're going to call, so you have to plan to call. And then next to last, I guess, is to get your mind right. It's this is something that you have to work yourself into a little bit to start making calls. I would say a few things here. If you can stand, I have found that I'm a lot more comfortable if I have a desk that I could stand up at, is to raise that up and stand. I just feel a lot more confidence there. Always remember your goal when you're picking up the phone and making that call. Remember the goal. You're just trying to get that piece of information, and it's a bonus if you get something else. And then speak slowly and clearly, but also be mindful of a person's time. So this is not a time to go in and ask them about the weather and what they do for hobbies. This is get your information and kind of move on in a professional manner.
And this approach too, what's interesting to me, and it's the same thing I would coach people in, our marketing clients, we talk about this a lot, is that it's not a stressful approach to cold calling. So you're not trying to close the deal. You're not trying to force their hand on something.
Not at all.
You're not doing anything really other than gathering information that's going to really help you later on in the sales process.
That's right. It's like having a conversation with somebody you might encounter at church or at school or wherever you are. You're just having a little short conversation.
And then the next call is not cold after that.
That's right.
So the initial cold call doesn't have to be combative or like there's some sort of like conflict going on or tension or whatever. Like it's just purely getting some information.
That's right. Yeah. And then the last thing, a part of this framework would be is to in most cases when you make a telephone call, you're going to get voicemail. Have a plan for that. No, don't come into that and go, I forgot I have to leave a voicemail. Or if you're going in doing a cold call, like walking in, is to have your leave behinds ready to leave that behind if somebody can't talk to you. So that's kind of wraps it up. Kind of that whole framework for making calls.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, Jeff. If you have any questions about the sales or cold calling process, Jeff is always at hand to help with that, and we're also able to help with the marketing piece as well. This is good information. I appreciate it, Jeff, and we'll see you next time.